Good morning. My name is Felicia Shakespeare, and welcome to You Are Your Brand. Let's talk. I'm so excited to be here again with you today. It is a wonderful day. The sun is shining bright, both inside and out, right? I'm so excited to continue on this journey with you. Last week was our time to just kind of say hello, just to introduce myself. But I wanted to make sure that we made time today to really get into some topics about branding. So, once again, thank you for being here. Last week, one of the key words that I talked about was representation, but I do think it's so important to understand as a refresher what a brand truly is, right? A lot of times, I just think we've heard this terminology so much in society to the extent that most people are just taking it as what you can aesthetically present, and a lot of times are glossing over the component of how you are being built. So, everything, right? Y'all can say that with me. Everything has a foundation, right? Everything has a foundation. So, in terms of brands being acknowledged in business transactions, of course, that's one way to look at it. But for me, and when I kind of came upon this topic several years back, over 5 years ago, what I thought of as a brand in its truest sense is meant to innately connect you as the individual. Who are you, right? Who are you as the individual? What is your distinctness? What is your uniqueness? Aside from your business. So, figuratively, of course, every business is a brand, right? But as an individual, regardless of what choices you made as a professional, as a career, as an entrepreneur, guess what? You're always bringing you to it, right? Another thing I want to think about and have you think about today as we do like a kind of refresher 101 of branding. Um, Most times, as I said it before, we're connecting brands to businesses. But do you realize that everyday people are brands? And guess what? That means everyone has a brand. Because why? We're all everyday people. I don't care who you are. I don't care what spectrum of life you're operating in. You, as an individual, are a brand. And all of that will be aligned to what I would say is your level of what you define as success, right? So, in reality, ordinary people, everyday people are brands. Nobody is a superhero. I always tell people we all get up every day. We put our clothes on. We brush our teeth. We move about our day. And guess what? But how you're doing that, as far as how you're representing yourself, is what's critical to our conversation today. So the only difference in you and any other person is how you choose to live your life. Well, and sometimes we hear that word extraordinary life, right? Uh, what is the word on extra and extraordinary? Of course, ordinary and extra, right? How much extra are you willing to put into representing yourself and becoming the best version of yourself? How often have we heard that? So, what I want to make sure of is, I want to think about the fact of what a brand is. As I did my research and I did my book 5 years ago, You Are Your Brand, I was thinking about the aspect of branding and how way back in the day, right, when someone wanted to distinct their property, make their property distinctive from others, what did they do? They actually took this hot iron piece. I don't know how you would call it, but it was so hot until, of course, it was colored, and they branded the animals. Of course, even if we just be very realistic, and unfortunately, even down to our history, African Americans, even in slavery, we were branded, just like they would brand anything else. So, what did that mean? That means you were distinctly positioned and known to be a part of something in particular. So, when I think of, once again, individuals, we all have natural talents, right? We all have natural gifts. Some are singers, some are athletes. But at the end of the day, besides the gift that you have, there is some effort that has to be made to distinct you, to make you distinctly the brand that you are. And when I say that, the best version of it. So that's when I focus on the aspect of building from the inside out, that is what is stated. the essence, the truest sense of a personal brand is the way one represents themselves to the world. But not only that, the way the world recognizes you, right? So at the end of the day, you have to have a certain level of understanding, first of all, of your purpose, right? So even being a part of She Is Still Dope, we are a purpose driven network, right? Women that are purpose driven. So I would say, uh, brand refresher 101, you have to understand who you are, right? You can't be a brand if you don't understand your purpose, right? And I think that's where the inside out comes from for me, because at the end of the day, your purpose comes from within. I remember a time, even when I chose my career path, back in the day, as we say, it was, you were just told what, grow up, go to college, go to school, and if that was in your family's framework, and then go get a good job, right? And then of course move out, take care of yourself, save your money, and that, go live a happy life, and at the end of the day, we thought that just going to college, in most cases in my mind, was enough. That was one thing as a young girl I always knew I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to be in the beginning, but I know what I wanted to do. But I always felt like I had so much pressure to figure out, what was I going to be when I grow up? What is this thing I want to be? And what is that? Typically, what are we doing? We're forcing ourselves into roles. And a lot of times, what do? We base that on the financial component, right? What was going to be the high paying job, right? So I was looking at, okay, maybe I want to be a lawyer, because in my mind, lawyers were, first of all, considered to be what, quote unquote, somebody in society. And at the end of the day, in my mind, I thought they made a whole lot of money, as they say, bukus of money. But at the end of the day, I did take the LSAT, by the way, and that wasn't it. So went on to, just give a little background, went on to have a career in the business sector. At first, I was toiling with education and business, teaching or being a business professional. And ultimately, I chose the path of business for two reasons. A, I was a first generation graduate, and I was in a situation where I was working part time for a business organization, and they decided to help pay for my tuition. So that kind of put me in a crunch where, do I want to really pursue this thing that I love and I think I really want to be potentially in education, teaching others, or go along this path? But I will say this, I did enjoy the business sector, right? It was things about it I was learning, and I was like, oh, I really kind of like this. So it was a no-brainer for me to just take that path. So that was the path that I took. But I will always say there is a path to purpose. Right? Everybody say, there is a path to purpose, right? And I came full circle. So one thing about life, I really believe that if you are seeking out your purpose, you will innately get back to it, even if you are off track. So, what is one tip I want to say? You have to be intentional, right? You have to be intentional about your life. So that is one of the things I learned in my journey. And as fate would have it, years later, sometime later in my career, the opportunity represented itself for me to enter education and take the graduate programs, and ultimately earning, my postgraduate degrees in education, educational leadership. But it brought me full circle. But once again, back to knowing who you are. You know, I will never forget that moment. I was in a situation where I was in corporate America, and um, my father, I guess actually my father. So you have to hear the voices, right? Even know and discern, who's really speaking into your life and who's really leading you in the right way. And I was already contemplating and praying about what to do next. Because I got to a point in my career where it was so much dissatisfaction. And let me just say this, I had finally, in my mind, at least broke the ceiling of where I was at the time, broke through to the salary I wanted. I finally got the opportunity I thought I wanted. I was working from home, just traveling around the country, meeting people from all over the United States and the world, putting all these key opportunities, just really living it up. And can you believe at that moment, that was like the lowest time? It was like I finally had gotten to this point, but it was like, I just was not fulfilled. Why? Because I wasn't fully in my purpose. I got to the point where I realized that, what, pushing deals, that was good, but I had a desire to work with people. and change lives. So then I had to really assess. So back to my point, that whole time when they downsized, that time came every year like clockwork. But what my company had at the time, I won't name them, but at the time, what I loved about them is they gave a voluntary option every single year. Do you want to leave? If you feel you want to take this package, do something else. That was your choice. But how many of you all know God has a plan? And I will never forget, literally 7 years, almost to the day that I accepted this position at this organization, I got the call, and I knew that I had to make a pivot, and I knew also my time was up, and I felt like but this is the right time. So back to my father, when I finally uh, got that opportunity involuntarily, by the way, this last time, that was the one time it was like, it was almost like this last in, first out scenario. I was not new to the organization, but I was new in this department, just to wrap this up. But long and short, I was contemplating what I was going to do next. And my first initial thing, just get another position. All the doors were closing. So I'll just say this. Next tip. Know the signs, right? You have to be intentional, but you also have to recognize the signs, right, that God is giving you, because He's speaking all the time. But the question is, are you listening, and are you able to hear? Even some people say your gut, your intuition. We call it discernment. What is it? Whatever you call it. But long and short, as time would have it and fate would have it, all the doors were closing. I'm just like, there's nothing's opening here. I'm really trying to push through all this. But sometimes the closed doors are opportunities. Write that down. Sometimes closed doors are opportunities. And with all that said and done, my father just had a conversation as I was in thought and prayer, because every door was closing. I finally had to say, you know what, Felicia, you just need to stop and think, okay, what is, get into some prayer. What is next, God? Like, what is it that you're really trying to tell me here? And ultimately, he just said one statement to me, my father. He said, didn't you always want to go into education? Maybe this is a good time. I'm like, and it was like, ding, 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 ding. I'm like, wow, something that was so obvious, literally so obvious, had fleeted my mind. And I promise you, when I got that message and I started making steps towards that pivot, everything, when I say I mean everything, the tuition. I was invited to an accelerated program. I had made up my mind, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I hear you. Now I'm going to move in this direction. And ultimately, when I did that, the doors flew open. I was invited to unexpectedly, at least, but nothing just happens, right? We know that. I was invited unexpectedly to be a part of an information session. Didn't even know I was going to be interviewed on the spot. So you got to be ready, right? Once you get in that position, even as understanding your purpose, right? We're talking about branding, right? But we're still talking about your purpose being the first thing you have to identify. And not only did I go to this information session, and everything that day tried to stop me, I promise you. So you will have opposition. I want you to know this. Even if you're in your purpose, even if you identify your brand, you will have opposition. That morning, I promise you, it was the coldest day in Chicago. It was in the February, one of the coldest months here. Everything was happening. And mind you, this place was 5 minutes from my home, but I promise you, it was slick ice outside. I actually I had fail. It was just all kinds of stuff. But something to me was like, just get there. Just get there. And I got there, and long and short, I was chosen, not knowing I was going to be interviewed that day, chosen for a master's program. An accelerator program took me half the time that would have normally taken 3 years. It was a 12, 14-month program. I had full credentials in and out, all because why? I heard, I was intentional, first of all. I was able to discern, and ultimately acted on, right? I acted on what was to be, and as a result, and there's so much more to that story I don't have time to go into today, but all the signs were there from people that I knew. I was interviewed on the spot and hired on the spot, put in this program, only 20 positions open for this program, and they chose me, one of 20 people, and ultimately 12 of us successfully finished it. So I just want you to know you definitely have a purpose, and that is the number one thing with understanding your brand, right? Your personal brand, you must understand the purpose that you have in life. And I promise you, uh, as quiet as it's kept, you God wants you to get there. You're not. He's not trying to hide that from you. But many times we have to once again cut off the noise, shut it down, and really get in a place that we can hear what to do in those specific times. So if you're with me, type in the chat box. Yes, yes, yes. I hope you are with me on that. So Brand Refresher 101, I was talking about having a mark, right? You are marked. And when I say that, we talked about the aspect of the history of branding, right? The aspect of why at one point in time you were literally marked. But I want you to think that in another perspective, as I was thinking about that this morning. You are literally marked, as in there is something, back to purpose. There is something that you are intended to do that no one else will be able to do just like you. There is something that you are destined to do when you are in your purpose that no one else will be able to do. And when I say that, literally the uniqueness of who you are, the uniqueness of your personality, the uniqueness of your training, the uniqueness of the people that you have to impact. I am a firm believer, although I was still indirectly impacting people in my corporate position. There was just a yearning inside me to really work up close and more personal to impact lives where I could see immediate results. But guess what? We're all intended to do something unique, and no one can do. I don't care how many times someone has written a book. I don't care how many times someone has run for an office, a political office. I don't care what someone else's story is. You have a brand. You are your brand. And whatever you are intended to do, no one can do it like you. Now, the key, though, however, the success of branding, what personal branding, is how you approach the excellence factor, right? Are you willing to be great in whatever that is? Are you willing to put in the time, the work, the energy it takes to be the best version of what you are supposed to do? Of course, once again, it's how you present yourself to the world. Our biggest concern, though, with this topic of branding, though, you are your brand, it should never be what they think. It should be what I know, right? Because once you know who you are, once you know whose you are, once you realize this is the thing I'm supposed to be doing at this particular time, guess what? The only competition you have now is your old self, right? The old mind, right? Because really what we're talking about, right, at this moment, understanding purpose, that is a mindset, right? That's something you have to know inside yourself. And as some folks would say back in the day, know in your knower. Who's ever heard of that? Know in your knower, right? All they meant by that was you have to believe in it, you have to know it, you have to drink the juice, eat the sauce, whatever you want to say about that thing. Because why? Until you believe it, no one else will. I repeat, until you are convinced in the thing that you are called to do, no one else will. So one of even my personal missions is I inspire others to be intentional about living a life of faith and purpose. That is my personal mission statement. When I wrote the book, You Are Your Brand, one of the things that I was, of course, on this journey of becoming an author and just the collaborations and things, one of the things you always hear is, what is your statement? What is it that you are called to do? So that is what I'm called to do. One of the aspects of things I'm called to do is to inspire others to be intentional. So that is one of the points today. You have to be intentional about your brand. Another thing I want to talk about, is just what is a personal brand defined, right? So a personal brand defined, of course, branding, we hear it over and over. We hear references to it on television. But what I want to talk about, really the raw definition. So whether referring to a business or an individual, the term brand can still have a variety of meanings within each and every situation. But there's no way to come to the full potential of a brand without knowing strategically your part in your personal development journey. So by you identifying, first of all, your purpose, once you know your purpose, now you can identify what it is and how you would go about fulfilling it, right? So that's the key to understanding who you are as a brand. So once again, back to my point of the aspect of the scope of reference or range of brands, it's a full gamut, right? But ultimately, what is it that you are intended to do? Have you, once you get to that point of understanding that your purpose and being intentional about it, now the only thing you should be concerned about, not so much just about the opinions. Of course, at the end of the day, what we do brings impact, how we present ourselves. We're going to deal with that as the show goes on. But I want to get you now to just the basics, right? Branding 101, the refresher. What is it? What is it that you know that you have been called to do? What are you pursuing that? And are you pursuing that in a way of excellence? All right. So how do we do that? Preparation is key. What do you want? Okay. What is it that you want? I was thinking about the book and just one particular point. There was a reference to just a story of this individual that she would prepare, for lack of a better term, her job was to provide etiquette and training to women that wanted to, I guess, be be married. And one of her tests was when she met someone to figure out if they were right for this opportunity, because apparently this opportunity would get these ladies into a position where they were almost, for lack of a better term, selected and chosen. But long and short, the point I want to make about the story is the fact that what she would do is, let me see your purse. And when she took the purse and had them pour everything out of their purse, it was like a little test, unknown test. If there were things in that purse that weren't supposed to be there, if that purse was for lack of a term, a hot mess, things just in there, garbage, just unorganized, she would just basically, okay, next. Because why? What we do and how we represent ourselves in the basic things is critical. So that's what I wanted you to take away from that. At the end of the day, it starts with the little things, right? We even know the scripture tells us how to, it's the little foxes that destroy the vine. It's not the big things. Even myself as an individual, I have to always, just keep focused. I'm always good with the big picture. I can see it, I can do it, I can get past it when it's the bigger picture, but it's just those little nagging things that want to sometimes irk me or get me off my squares, as the young people would say, the kids. But it isn't critical, even every aspect of the little things of how we navigate our lives is important. So that's why, once again, it's for everyday people. It's not just for this elite group or this select group. You have a purpose, right? Why? And you have a brand. Automatically, just because you have a purpose, you have a brand. But yes, how you handle that, from this point forward, and I always say, we're accountable for what we do know. When we don't know something, we can't, we're going to still be held accountable. It's not going to negate, not knowing certain things. Of course, in the law, in terms of law, they're not going to have mercy necessarily on you just because you didn't know the law, but because it's an expectation that you understand the law and that you be proactive in understanding. So that's really what I'm saying here. You have to be proactive about your brand to the extent where you are looking at the little things, right? How you navigate. So in that example of, being chosen just because you had uh, things in order, guess what? That's true. You don't know who's watching, right? At the end of the day, not that that is our forefront concern, but it is critical, right? How you are perceived, right? And why? If you're living out your purpose, if you are intentional, if you are discerning, and you are choosing to be the best version of yourself, guess what? You are in excellence. You can do the best that you can. And guess what? That is what's expected. I always tell students, just do your best. If you're doing your best, that's all you can do, right? But of course, you have to back to personal development. That's a huge part of personal branding, understanding who you are, right? And also understanding the fact that you have to take the ownership of your brand, right? You have to take ownership of it once you are brought into light that you are a brand. So whether it be, like I said, something simple, what people would consider simple, and even in this, in terms of how we've navigated through this pandemic, right? We learned that what the frontliners, what do they call it? I can't think of the term right now, but the workers, all the frontline workers, the ones that were overlooked before, right? The ones that weren't considered important in a lot of people's eyes. When you're talking about your bus drivers, and you're talking about your grocery workers, or individuals that were teaching your children, all the people that were, I would say, on the bottom, quote unquote, in this society, because it's not everywhere. There are some places in the world where certain positions are considered prominent. Like I know, for example, in Mexico, in the Mexican culture, to be a teacher is just like on the level of being a priest. You are given that much regard. But with all of that said and done, what I'm saying, the frontline workers, the essential, that's the word that we call them, the essential workers. Now there's a whole new perspective when that pandemic took place, right? Individuals got to see how valuable the essential workers are. That's why they're essential, right? How valuable, that educator has been to relieving a lot of what parents didn't realize they were taking on, not just textbooks and teaching, but nurturing your child, and giving them skills, social skills, and doing social emotional development. Back to, once again, just the basic things that individuals have done, janitorial work, back to that, how important it is to have a clean, sanitary environment, right? This all came out to the forefront, and now the perspective is different. So I'm saying all that to say, just know your brand is valuable. Whatever it is your purpose to do, whatever it is you're intended to do, whatever it is you see as your knack to do, uh, do it to the best of your ability. Be excellent at it. Watch the greats. You have to study people, right? And I will end with this. There is nothing that hasn't been done that's not under the sun, right? Most things have been done, but it's all about the perspective and the uniqueness that you bring to the table. There's how many burger places in the world? How many restaurants have been, had a reiteration of the burger and the fries, right? And the soda and the shake. It's not that it's not done, but um, what is it? I won't start naming names, but all of these brands have done it just a little differently. Why? They've added their own touch, their own sauce, their own perspective. And that's what I want you to know today, that you have a perspective, you have a purpose. No one can fulfill like you can in the way that you can. So, your assignment between now and next Thursday is to just really solidify with yourself. Am I doing all that I can? And I promise you, you're going to find room. We all have room to grow and to improve. Even myself, I want, even with being on the show, it was like, okay, I'm so used to being a perfectionist, for lack of a better term, and this show is going to improve and get better and better. I promise. I promise you, because I'm here because of purpose, right? But at the end of the day, sometimes, we have to move in what we have at the time. Of course, there's certain things we want in place, and there's dreams. And guess what? You have to work towards those dreams. You have to walk it out, and just know that you have a purpose because of the brand that God has given you. But He also has given you the charge to develop yourself, right? To act on it. Don't be a procrastinator. Don't ignore the signs. When some doors aren't opening, maybe those doors are not supposed to open, or maybe it's maybe not ever, but maybe just not right now. Sometimes, I have to think about it. Right, not right now doesn't mean not ever. It's just me, may mean not yet. So, but at the end of the day, you can determine that and discern that. And sometimes there are things we have to walk away from, let go, and move on so we can be all that we were intended to be. So I am so happy that you joined me today. I hope you got something out of today's session. You are your brand. Refresher 101. Number one, being intentional about your brand. You have to be intentional. Uh, and how do you be intentional? You have to understand what your purpose is, right? You have to know what your purpose to do. Then once you have that, you can be very intentional about what your personal development, improving and being the best and excellent at the craft. And guess what? Ultimately the assignment that you have been given in this world. Why? We all are here on assignment. There's only so much time we all have, right? But so we want to be the best. We want to go full out and be all that we were intended to be in this life. So thank you again for tuning in to You Are Your Brand with Felicia Shakespeare. You can follow me on all social media platforms, particularly Instagram at Felicia Shakespeare, LinkedIn at Felicia Shakespeare. And until we meet next week, thank you so much for being here and have a wonderful day.